Willett, I own Unique Moments Photography. We're down in Gig Harbor, Washington, and so we come up this way a lot. I know some of you, don't know all of you. You guys all know I'm pretty active on the board with Brea's board and stuff like that. So, it's, man, what a great turnout. I'm glad to see everybody here. First things first, there's no such thing as a stupid question, so don't be intimidated to ask any questions. I'm going to walk you through some basic stuff here, and then we're going to walk you through how the new systems work, and it's really very, very simple to do. So who in here is absolutely new to lighting, off-camera flash lighting and strobe use? Okay, so that's good. I'm glad we got that. So let's get this started off right. So let me ask you a question. Who wrote that right there? I have mastered using natural light. Who said that? Somebody read that out loud. Somebody read that.
Does anybody need a handout real quick?
Yeah, God. Okay, it says, I have mastered using natural light, but I have never mastered strobes and studio lighting. 2 reasons why. I was afraid of lights. Every lighting class I took confused me, and the information sounded like German to me. I did not understand the information, and it did not make sense. I hated the look. Who said that? Sue Bryce. Sue Bryce. I put that on there because I know a lot of you guys follow her. She's excellent, top-of-the-line photographer, very, very good. But she's actually pretty new to studio lighting too. She just started doing it. This was me in 2007. I didn't know anything about strobe lighting. That scared the crap out of me. And this is probably Cliff Mountainer in 1996. It's probably Tony Corbell, who was another great lighting master back in the 90s. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if that was Monty back in the 70s and stuff like that, Monty Zucker. So everybody is intimidated by these lights. People that really influenced me when I got myself going. And one of the first things the guy I learned from is a guy named Hanson Fong, and I met him at a PPA conference. He told me if you want to have great images, if you really want to create dynamic looks in your image and get people to go wow and ooh and ah of your pictures, you got to use backlighting. You got to get backlighting behind your people. You got to get lighting coming from behind, and then you got to film from the front side. That's how you get that oh wow type look. And he was right. And I've noticed that since I've been lighting now, going on what, 12, 13 years outside with lighting, I notice he's 100% right. I constantly, when I'm going outside to light, I'm looking for where's my light source coming from. I want to know where it's coming from. So if you look right here, her light source is coming right through here, and it's lighting up the front here. This is where the light's coming from, is over here. So if I was going to shoot somebody outside, I would find some place to shoot them so the light is always behind them, because I want lighting to hit them from behind. I want lighting to create looks from behind them. If you look at what all the master photographers did back in the art eras and the Renaissance areas and all that stuff, they all brushed lighting into those pictures. They all brushed backlighting in there. That's why we use these windows, these giant windows for lighting. So that was really, really important for me to understand that. And once you understand that backlighting is the key to being successful outside, you're going to walk around outside, and when you take your clients out to shoot photos, you're going to be looking where your light's coming from. You got to know where it's coming from. And then you're going to be putting their backs to the light. And when you take your exposures outside and you take your readings, they're going to go completely dark. So let's slip this over here and let's walk this through this. This is step A. You have to understand this if you're going to do flash photography. Sync speed, okay? Most of you guys that use a flash know what it is. For you that don't know what it is, sync speed is your shutter gate, and that's that little black bar that's shot. I do it very simple. I use the KISS method for photography. Keep it simple, stupid. That's me. Because I'm like Sue Bryce. I didn't understand all that technical stuff at all. It was Greek to me. Oh my God, I used to get lost. I remember back in the lighting classes back in the 70s and 80s at schools, so I didn't know what the hell they were talking about. It just never made sense. So this gate speed that's in your cameras, for almost everybody in this room, it's going to be 1/200. That's your shutter speed, okay? 5D3 owners, if you're outside, probably 1/160. It starts to show up at 160 in the frames. So you can go outside and take a photograph at 1/200, and if you turn your flash on, it will not have the bar that will show up in your thing. The trouble is at 1/200, you have to have an aperture setting, and you have to, that's big enough in the light that you're in to keep that shutter down to 1/200. Yeah, right here. Right here.
We didn't plan any of this.
We didn't plan it. Shutter sync.
Slides as he
Yeah, this is actually perfect. So see right here, guys? This is right here. 1/400, you're going to wipe out half your picture with the gate in the camera. So if you're outside, you're outside taking a picture, you've got to be able to be at an aperture that keeps your shutter at 200, which means if you're outside in this light right now, you're going to be at 8.0, 5.6, depending what your ISO settings is. That's what you're going to be shooting outside. That's great, but probably all of us in here are wedding and portrait photographers, right? Who sells pictures at 5.6 to clients or 8.0 at clients? You don't. We need to be down at 2.8, 2.5. We need to be separated from the backgrounds. We want it nice and soft and blurry and out of focus and all that stuff that goes on when we're doing portraits outside. So that means if you're using the old systems here, where you're at 1/250, you have got to figure out how to get that aperture down. That means you're going to be using ND filters, like on the lights there with the Alien B lights. You're going to be slapping 2-stop ND filters, screwing them on the camera there, and you're going to go from 5.6 to 2.8, 2 stops there, or whatever it's going to be there. You got to learn to count the stops, but that's what you're going to do. You're going to pull it down so that you can shoot at 2.8. You're going to be putting filters on so you can keep your shutter speeds at 1/200. So with that in mind, that's just the basics of it. Now that you know that, throw that all away. Just forget about it. You just have to understand 1/200. When you're out on location, you're doing photography. Let me get a camera out here. There's 2 ways to figure out your ambient light. You can take one of these out there. This is a light meter. And you can set these things up. You can start pointing around and getting readings. What's the sky's this reading here? What's this reading here? And get a general idea what that ambient light is out there. That's the old way. And I only do that in studio now. Or, everybody didn't bring their cameras, did they? Okay. You take your cameras. Okay? Oh, let me get it in here. Get your cameras out. Okay, so you got your cameras out, right? And you're walking around with your client, and you want to take pictures with your flash. First thing you got to know is, what's my light? What am I got? I got to be at, in this 200 range. So take your cameras and put them in TV mode. Okay? Put it in TV mode. That's shutter priority mode. And I apologize. I'm a Beach Boy fan. Okay? I'm a Beach Boy fan. Let me turn this off. Okay, you put them in shutter priority like this. Put them at 160. When I'm walking out with a client and I've got my light on my shoulder, I walk around like this at my shoots. It's on there. I walk around like this with my modifier on. This is how I shoot. I walk around like this all day long. Who's the littlest girl in this room? Who's the littlest one in here? Give me somebody tiny. I want somebody tiny up here. Where's Tina? Come here, Tina. Come here. So I walk around like this. As I'm walking up to a location, I've got my camera in TV mode and I'm going, yeah, that's about right. Okay, just like that. Do me a favor. Throw that over your shoulder.
Okay.
Throw that over your shoulder. Throw it back there.
So work it out.
No, it's not. Just balance it.
Okay.
Is that heavy?
I mean,
Is it heavy?
all day, yeah.
Walk around. Just walk around.
All day?
Just walk around. Does that feel heavy to you?
Nice walk.
That's pretty easy to do, right?
That's what I do.
It's pretty easy to do, right?
I mean,
It's pretty light. So you're going to walk around. You're going to set your flash down. And I've got my client. My client doesn't know what's going on, right? I already know that I pointed my camera back towards that window, and I'm going to shoot into that light, okay? And I already know as I'm walking up to my scene, it says, ooh, you're at 4.5 at 160. So I know that ambient light over there is someplace around 4.5, maybe 5.0, depending what you're shooting at. I already know that's what's going on. And then at that point, we're going to introduce you to the new lights. I don't have to take an old speed light here on the old system or an Alien B out side and shoot and stay at 1/160 because otherwise when you get above 160 or 200 you have to go to what they call high-speed sync. And high-speed sync means under the old systems the lights would pulse as it's going through the gate and would keep your subject nice and lit up through there. And it robs these flashes of a tremendous amount of power. So you get really limited with a speed light outside because you get up to 5.0 lighting or 5.6 lighting. I'm going to be shooting, it's going to, high speed sync on this is going to rob it of a lot of power. There we go. So John's got that there for you. This is that going on. So introducing to you Godox. These things are game changers for photographers. I can go outside and F16, actually I've been on the water, F18 lighting. I'll just get out there and take my picture and I know exactly what the ambient light is. And all I've got to do, and this is all you have to do, once you know in shutter mode what your ambient light is, all you've got to do is put your client's backs to the light coming behind him. You've metered the location behind them. That's your ambient light that you're in. Now all you got to do is take your light, turn it on, put your flash in the camera, and take that setting you've got, 5.0 at 160, or wherever it is. I go to manual mode. I just flip it back to manual mode, and I put the setting that my meter told me in my camera, because this camera's smarter than me. It already metered the location for me. So I'm going to take that setting that on the TV mode, I'm going to switch it to manual mode. And I'm going to set that setting in there, which is 5.0 at 160 or 4.5 at 160.
What are you doing with ISO? I mean, I haven't heard you mention that yet.
Well, I'll talk about that in just a sec. I've just kind of figured at 100. I actually set my camera at 400 ISO to get that reading back there at 4.5 at 160 because we're inside. But ISO is the sensitivity of your sensor to the lighting that you're in. That's all it is. So I've got mine set at 400 in here because we're inside. But if I was outside, I might set it at 200. I don't care what it is, because you get concerned with ISO because it introduces noise into the images, but the cameras are so clean, guys. These cameras are such good cameras these days, particularly the new D750s and the 5D Mark IVs and the 1DX2s and the D5s. They're phenomenal cameras. Oh my gosh. 5D4s, you can shoot them at 12,800 ISO and you don't really have to worry about noise anymore on them. They're that clean. So they're phenomenal. So I don't really worry about ISO. I'll show you why in just a minute. But anyway, back to where I was. You know what the ambient light is, right? You set your client up, you turn this light on, you put this on your camera, this little trigger here, and boom, you're ready to go. Your flash is triggering off the camera, and all you've got to do now is once you're here and you know what that light is back there, you take a test shot. Boom. Or you can take a light meter and you can come over to your client and do this. Yeah, I know what the light is back there. Let's turn the power up. Let's turn the power up some more. Yeah, that should get it. And then you come back here and you go, click. Oh, damn, it's still right. And you just kind of play around with it, right? But you're going to train your eye when you start doing this a lot. You're going to train your eye to know about where you're going to be at. You're going to be surprised how many times you guess it right the very first time. I'm shooting against backlighting. I know that the lighting is going to go on. I'm going to click this thing up to maybe, I might click it up to a 16th. So it's on channel B. I'll check it up here to B to, let's kick it up, I'll nuke you guys back there. I'm going to kick it up to an 8th power here. Okay, watch out. Look at that. See the power of that light coming at you? It's a lot of light. 8th power is a lot of light outside, particularly in this thing. It's pretty bright, right? And if you go up to even higher, I'll just put it at 1/4 power. 1/4 power. Look out. See how bright that is? See that? See? See that? So you're not going to miss outside with these lights, because you can light. All these things do, all lighting does is one thing. Guys, it's really simple. All these things do is they match or get you close to the ambient light that's behind your subjects. So they're fill lights. That's all they are. They just fill you in the shadows that's going to be behind you, and it's going to match the exposure on the front side here to what's behind them there. And then you could have a nicely exposed image. That's all they do. They're that simple. And once you understand that, then you can train your own eyes to create the looks that you like, and you're going to know where you're going to go out there. The biggest complaint I get with everybody about flash photography is that I don't like using flash because it looks flashy. That's the biggest gripe. for newer photographers that are switching in. And it does. It looks really flashy, unless you outsmart the flash and train yourself to do some things. These light meters come in handy outside for one reason. They have a gauge on them, and it tells the percentage of light that's hitting your subject versus the ambient light you're in. So these things you can take these outside, and you know what your ambient reading is. You can kind of throw your light in here and turn your dome out. Just trip your domes out and take a reading. And it will tell you the percent. Matter of fact, let me do that. Okay, I've got it at 200 ISO. Close your eyes. Here we go. 200 ISO, boom. It says I'm at 9.0 at 160 in here. And we know that is back there. We know that's 4 or 5 light. So that's almost 3 times as bright as it needs to be. So I can take this light now that I know where I want to be at. I'm going to turn it down. I'm going to get it down to like a 32nd. I'm going to retake the shot. I'm going to boom, boom. That's 6.3, still too bright. You want to get it down a little bit lower, but that told me actually that's probably pretty close. That told me that it's 30%. See that 30% there on that thing there? 30% is what that light meter says. 30 to 40%, your images aren't going to look flashy. If I crank this up to where I'm going to go to, I'll get it back up to 1/8, and I take the shot, that's 50%. It's going to look pretty flashy at 50%. So I don't use this outside because I don't have time when I'm out there with clients and like at weddings and walking brides through the stuff that we're doing. I don't have time to guess where it's at, to get an exact reading. But I've been doing it long enough now, and you guys, when you start doing this, you'll start training your eye till you get a look what you want. So I've been doing it long enough to know that at eighth power here, I'm going to blow that. She's going to be hot. I'm going to blow that to smithereens. So I'm going to back this down. I'm going to start around a 32nd or so when I start shooting outside. And I'm going to start shooting around a 32nd, and I'm going to find, there's maybe a hint, I can take a little bit more light on them and make them not look flashy. So you're going to figure out a blend that you're going to like. And you're going to find your comfort zone with that flash outside where you want to be at. And you could be lighting with the best of them all day long.
Can you talk a bit more about the specific light?
Yep.
There's no umbrella, it's just a bulb. Is that just for one subject? In what application?
Well, this is a bare bulb right now. So let's talk about these Godox lights, because they really have changed the game for photographers. You don't have to worry about high-speed spink and the gate speed and all that stuff anymore. You just don't have to worry about it. All you got to do is just get a light, because these things are now auto high-speed sync. That means it's going to automatically take your cameras and throw them into high-speed sync for you. So you don't have to worry about it. It's going to do it for you. So if you take your camera and you put it in, I use the auto modes. I use AV a lot. I use an AV an awful lot. I try to stay out of manual mode when I'm outside moving around and changing light. I try to stay out of it because I'm constantly chasing the shutter at that point. I don't want to chase the shutter. I want to chase depth of field is when I'm outside. So I'm setting my cameras up, my lens up. I mean, I spent $1,000 for an 85 Sigma 1.4 lens. I spent $1,000 on it because I don't want to be shooting at 4 outside with a $1,000 Sigma lens. I want to be shooting at 2.0, 1.2, 2.5. That's why I spent $1,000 for that lens. So I use the auto modes out there outside because when I fire off at 2.5, I already know it's going to go high speed sync. It's going to go to 1/2000, 1/1250, 1/4000, whatever light I'm in, it's going to go there. It's going to go right in there. I don't have to worry about it because the light's going to automatically go into high speed sync for me. So when I'm outside, I'm controlling aperture and how bright I want this light to be. And it's really simple because you just got your dial right here, and if it's too bright, you sit there and shoot your bowl for your customers for a second. You kind of adjust this down, and okay, I'm going to adjust this down a little bit less here and take another we're ready to go. Ready to go and start taking pictures. It's going to go right into automatic high speed sync for you. So that's the beauty of it. You don't have to mess around with it. Just put it on. There's a button back here that says high speed sync. You turn it on right here. Bam. That's not it. It's in here. It's in high speed. This one goes in auto high speed sync. I don't have to worry about it. And the other one you have to turn it on. But if you're using a speed light outside, like these speed lights here, then you have to turn on to auto high speed sync. The beauty of Godox is this. You got one trigger here, and they make a pro trigger that sits on top, the bigger one. a lot more menu to see what you're doing. But the beauty of Godox is you can use your cameras in auto modes. I use AV a ton outside. And you can put your cameras in the auto modes. You can set your depth of field that you want to set them at. And this flash is going to go to automatic high-speed sync. And so all you're going to do is control your exposure from the back of your camera with this trigger. It does everything for you. The other beauty of Godox is that Godox has 3 lights now. They got the 600. They got the 360. This is the 360. This is what changed the game for wedding photographers right here. This light right here. I still have it. I still use it. This is the old style, which means it doesn't do automatic high-speed sync, which means if I want to use it, I've got to come back here and push a couple buttons, and I got to actually physically turn high-speed sync on the camera. Remember, if you go to high-speed sync, that means you don't have to worry about your gate speed because this system will automatically set the exposure for you, and you're not going to get a gate speed in it. But the beauty of Godox is that this 360 is what changed the game. This speed light here from Godox, I might as well turn it on. Yep, it's set. You fire it. There you go. See it flash? See that? You guys see this light flash here? Everybody see it flash? Here's the beauty of Godox. The 360s changed the game because this is about 55 watt-seconds of power, okay? Not very powerful. Works great for inside. Works great in low light. Works great at sunset. Oh my God, it's great. I use these all the time at sunset. But it's only got 55 watt-seconds on it. So if I get outside and I'm out in there in that what is the light out there? Probably F6 or 5.6 right now. This light's very limited at what it can do because it can't light what's behind my subject up bright enough without you lose the sky blue, you lose all the stuff, so it blows out your skies. 55 watt-seconds here. This one here from Godox, and this is what I recommend that you start with, is 355 watt-seconds. It means it's 5.5 of these going off at full power at the same time. 5 times the power. So with this here at 355 or 58 watt-seconds, you can be outside and this thing can go to high-speed syncs, and you can be at your lower apertures, 2.8, 4.0, 5.6, and your shutter speed is going to jump up there to 1,200, 1,500 in that ballpark there, 800 in there, and that sky is going to be as blue as you can possibly be. You're not going to lose any of the blue. You're not going to blow out anything behind you because you can light outside the front side of this and match that exposure in that sky. If I metered, remember I took your camera mode and put it in TV mode, and I shot it right at you at this window, and it said it was 4.5 at 116 here. If I pointed at the sky, it's probably going to say it's like 8.0, 11.0 at 160. So there's 2 very different exposures there. But you want to find your averages where it's going to be at, and that's why I recommend just taking that camera in TV mode and pointing it back there, because my sky was blue in the test shot that I had. I take a look at it. And when you do that, you can just turn this light on and not lose any of that back there. It's all going to look the same. So these Godox systems are phenomenal. You can use it. You can turn all 3 lights on at the same time and fire them all at the same time and control the lights right from here. These triggers got A, B, and C channels, and D and E. It actually it holds 5 channels. So you can trigger 5 lights right here from the back of your camera. And it's very, very simple. So let me get some triggers out and show you guys. Any questions? Is it going too fast, too slow? I haven't done this before, guys. I'm not a teacher, so I'm not a teaching instructor. I just kind of show what. Yeah. All the Godox lights now do high-speed syncs. This is the very first Godox model that came out. It's not even longer, yeah. So all of them now do. They're called the X series. Godox X series is what they're called. They all do high-speed sync automatically. So you want to look at a 360X. They make a 200. Again, it's all about watt-seconds of power for the light. A 200 is going to limit you out in bright light. It's great for indoors, but it's to limit you for out in bright light. Yes?
So do your clients complain about the light? Because, I mean, you're being shooting and my eyes are like already,
Well, that's because it shot it directly at you. No, you didn't even see it go off. Yeah, they didn't even see it go off. They just don't see it because they're engaged with each other, and you just don't see it go off. I have never had anybody say, "Oh, it's hurting my eyes." I'm shooting it directly. That's why. And I'm also shooting 3 times the exposure back there, so that's why it's really, really bright. When you're outside in the light, your eyes are adjusting to the ambient light that you're in, right? So these flashes, you're just turning your flashes on. It's almost very close to the ambient light that they're in. They didn't even notice them going off, to be honest with you. They're very, very simple. So let me pass these out. You guys can spread these around. Here's one. Here's another one. Oh, get these out there. I have a whole bunch of these. Boom. Here's another one. You can put the battery in that one, make that work. If you turn them on and you start looking at them, I'll get up here and do this for you. They're right here. See this right here? Everybody see this? All these readings right here, 1/28 and all this stuff. They're all right here. See that? Everybody see that? See that? Yeah, you're making a trigger right from there. How about that? Look at that. You push the buttons, you guys got it. So you take your little flash right here. Now, I'll be honest with you. These are a little buggy. They're a little quirky to work. Who was on the board that said he had the Godox flashes and he had a lot of bad luck with them and they were buggy for him? Anybody remember who that was? Yeah, they're a little buggy. There's no doubt about it.
Mike?
Yeah.
Is the cheetah universal? Is that a universal trigger that can work with this?
No, there is not. So all you got to do, guys, I'll explain it to you right now. So all you got to do, guys, is you come in these things here. This is how simple they are. See the little wheel right here? You turn your wheel. There's A channel. There's a B channel. There's a C channel. There's a D channel, and there's an E channel on these triggers. Okay? This light here is set for A channel. Your channel button's right here. Here's your channel button right here. You can kind of push these things through here. High seeing speak is on. Where are they at here? There's the modeling light. They have a modeling light on them. Here we go. Channel button, CH. It goes, push the button here. Here's A. You can put this on A channel if you want to. I've got it set on B channel right now. So here's B. I can control this light on B channel right here with this trigger right here. A channel, and then this light here has got, they have little triggers that go on the side right here. So this is set on A channel right here. So if I wanted to control this light right here, I come over here like this. I push this button, and it's going to flash at you. And then all you got to do is turn your dial, and you can turn that light up and down anytime you want. Here's a 1/32 pop. Boom. Hear the difference on the light? See how bright that is? I can turn it right back down right here. It's all control right here at the back of the camera, right there by pushing that button.
So this is like, that would be ideal for like a like reception.
Oh, it's great.
Set up like all your lights and then you can
Yeah, you can. You can keep it off camera like that. So what you set right here, this is on radio frequency. So this is 2.4 gigahertz. So what you set right here, if I want the A channel moved, you're gonna, whatever light's gonna be, this is an A light, this is a B light. Where my little flash, you can set it C lights. All you're doing is putting your lights on the channel, and they're very simple to do. They're really simple to do. You just push the buttons and push it to the channel you want, and you're done. And then you can control your flash from here, and you're all set to go. So really, that's all off-camera flash is. It's really that simple. You go and you find your ambient light that you're in if you're outside. Put your cameras in TV mode, okay? Click it off. Find out what the setting is back there, 50, 56, whatever it's going to be. Put your client into the scene, fill them from the front side, match the ambient lighting behind you. That's all off-camera flash is. It's that simple. Now, Canon and Nikon, everybody's made it really easy for you guys. AV mode, aperture priority mode, right? I learned this from Mike and Cody back in 2007, I think it was, 2007. Tri-State Photography out of Texas at a PPA convention. Everybody was doing it always. 1/60, 1/200. They're slapping ND filters on them. They're walking around with alien bees with vagabonds. They're all trying to keep the shutter speed at 200. And they've got ND filters on. They're metering from the back behind them. It's 8.0, 11.0. They're putting 3-stop ND filters on them. They're dropping the apertures down to 3.5. And they're going out and firing the lights full power and shooting outside. It was a real pain in the ass back then. I mean, so it was really a pain. And lighting has greatly evolved since then. Now it's bulletproof. Now you can take your cameras and you can put your cameras in AV mode. Aperture priority, okay? Put your cameras in AV mode, and there's if you turn your cameras on, everybody go to AV mode. And I'll show you the pitfalls of AV mode right now. So inside here, it's pretty dark. And if I were to take a picture over here, and I'll just go snap a picture off in AV mode, it took it at 3.2 at 40. Oh my God, 3.2 at 40. That's really slow. So that means you're going to get motion blur, and it's all kinds of problems at 40 degrees shutter speed with it. A flash will probably hold it, but it's still a lot of problems. So they on the bottom of your camera, see the dial, the exposure compensations there? You can do two things. First of all, I would exposure compensate down. I'm usually 2/3 under where the center mark is at. So I'm going to go over here and expose down, and that took it up to 200, just by 2/3 of a stop, from 60 to 200. So you can control your shutter speed and the light that you're in with that exposure compensation. When you're in AV mode, the camera's looking 18% gray. The camera's looking to create an image at 18% gray. That's what it's looking to do. So, and here for me, I just shot over at Dan in 3.2 at 100 at 400 ISO. Looks really good to my eye in the back of this viewfinder here. It's actually a really good setting.
Can I ask a question? So exposure compensation, it's like Greek to me. So when you set that in camera, and you take a photo, is it automatically brightening or darkening?
Yes.
Based on what you set?
Right. If you put it at 0, okay.
Right.
If you take it and put it at 0, okay, the camera's going to try to create an image based on based on what the Canon's got programmed into this thing.
Okay.
It's going to try to take a picture at 18% gray. That's what it's going to try to do. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to point it right at Dan.
To clarify, it only works in automatic modes.
Right, yeah, automatic modes, right. Manual modes, you control aperture and shutter speed. But here's the beauty of auto modes. I'm going to go focus on Dan right here. Okay, I just focus on Dan, and it says 3.2 at 160 at 0. Look at that.
It's gone.
3.2 at 160 at 0. The camera knows what that setting is. Okay? 3.2 at 160. That's all. So it's a great thing to use because with a speed light, I got a speed light here. Who's got my speed? Where did I put it at? Put it over here. Well, I get another one out. Oh, here it is. Typically, when I'm in a room shooting, and I have this on a bracket, so I'm going to change this out of this mode that's in. And I'll put this back where it needs to be. Okay. I like to use ETTL a lot. I use that a lot. And I know that setting on Dan is where it's at. I'm going to probably go, I typically go down 1/3 and I go up a plus 1/3 on the flash to start. And if I take a shot at Dan here, there you go. And there it is. So here it is right here. It does everything for me. I don't have to worry about shutter speed. I don't worry about anything. Now, the beauty of these things is I can take the ISO, it was at 400, right? I'm going to crank the ISO up to 1,000. And I'm going to turn high-speed sync on this camera on. So high-speed sync's on. I'm going to just turn it to 1,000 ISO, right? Here we go. Here's Dan again. Here's the shot. It took the same exposure, okay? Took the same exact exposure. Took the exact same exposure. Everything looks good. Same as here's the last exposure. Same exposure. But the shutter speed on this one here was 500. The shutter speed on the other one was 250. It's the same exposure. That's because I raised my ISO up. So when I'm inside and I'm shooting a reception or I'm shooting around like this, AV mode is invaluable. Outside because it's going to do the same thing. But I can walk around. I'm going to set the ISO in here at 2,000. Pretty sensitive. Very, very sensitive at 2,000. I'm not going to ISO. So I'm going to focus on my couple shot right here at this table. I'm going to say, smile for the camera. I'm going to go boom. And here it is. It took the picture at 3.2 at 1250. Whoop. 3.2 at 1250. Same exposure. Same exact exposure. And I didn't do anything. Just changed ISO. If I wanted that picture brighter, I could bring the exposure compensation up another third and retake the picture again. Boom. Maybe I want it a little bit brighter. It dropped it down to 500. And it's a perfect exposure. All I got to do is crop this and send it on my merry way. The reason I shoot in the auto mode, so you guys know, I don't want to be messing around in post-processing, playing with images. I shoot too many weddings. Some of you guys need to do the same thing. We shoot way too many weddings to sit there and fiddle around with images. I want to get it 100% right in the camera. I want to crop it. I want to make a couple minor adjustments on the preset, and I'm going to ship them a proof file. I don't want to spend time. So it saves me money to shoot in auto modes. It really does. So the nice thing about these lights is I'm not changing anything. The camera's doing it all for me. Godox will set this up for you. It's going to go right to high-speed sync and do it for you. On this light, or on this light, it doesn't matter because where's the triggers? Click it. Push a button. Push a button. Go ahead. Turn them on. So if I had that trigger in here, I could fire all three of these lights and they're all going to do the same thing. You don't have to worry about nothing anymore. It does it for you automatically. That's what's so great about these lights. No more messing around with ND filters. No more messing around, I gotta go put a high speed sync. No more worrying about robbing power because if I'm outside with a 600, I can light the moon, backside of the moon with a 600. If you're outside and you're shooting outside, you need about 550 to 600 watt seconds to keep that sky bright blue when it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, this might not get you there. It might get you there at 4 because it's, 350 versus 550 watt seconds. That's quite a bit of power difference. So, but these are great for chasing sunset. These are even better for chasing sunsets and stuff like that. So I went through that pretty quick. I didn't even look at the notes. I just kind of went what I had here. And let me double check a couple things here. Does anybody have any questions? Any questions at all?
Not yet. I'm going to go over theory and studio lighting stuff, and I'll let you ask your questions.
On the speed light, I have a Nikon one, and my meter, the red lights that come out don't always go away when I'm taking the photos. Is there a way to turn that metering off?
Is it a Godox one?
Yeah.
Been a complaint about it. It has been a complaint about it.
Yeah, I've tried looking up to see if there's a way to turn it off, but I haven't been able to find it.
I used to get it, but the newer lights, I think there's an updated in your program, so you might not have it updated.
Okay, yeah.
You can, the newer light ones that you buy don't have the issues. Some of the older ones, and I had the issue too, but these things can be programmed. So when they have updates on their lights for bugs like that, like the red thing going on there, the bugs pop up as they introduce different products. You can go in and reprogram it on your system. It doesn't work on a Mac system. You have to do it from a PC system, which is a bummer. So I got to break out my PC laptop to do that. But yeah, they've probably got an update for that. Okay, so let me go over a couple last things. I'm going to turn this over to John. So we understand about 1/60. If you're using an old style light like these A-Lane-Bs, you have to keep it at 1/60, right? And if you're outside with those lights, then you have to use ND filters so you can pull your aperture settings down for acceptable range for portrait photographer. With Godox, you don't have to do it. You just turn high-speed sync on right here. Here's your high-speed sync, and you flip the thing on, and boom, it does it for you automatically. The X systems don't have to do anything. It just does it for you automatically. So, aperture. When you set your camera at 2.8 or 3.5, okay? Your flash setting here, and you set your flash, and you point it at the people for flash, and the intensity of that flash. Let's get a light blend that you like. So let's say I'm shooting in a 16th power, and that's what I like. It looks good. I can see in my viewfinder, it looks good. Doesn't look super, super flashy. That's what I want, right? So I get the camera set and I take a test shot. Good, I'm ready to go. That setting, that light is now set for f3.5 or 3.2. It's never going to change, ever going to change. You can move your light over to this side and light it from different sides as long as you keep the same distance from it. It's set for 3.5. If you go down to 2.8 and you say, I want to shoot it down to 2.8, well, then you're probably going to have to drop the power of your light down a little bit to accommodate for the more light that you're letting in at 2.8. If you want to go up to 5.6, you have to turn this back up to move the power up in the light to get your front side of your subject lit at 5.6. So the flash affects aperture settings only. That's what it affects. Your shutter speed, the 125, the 200, the 400s, that's your ambient light setting. So if you're shooting at 200 and it's too bright and you need to go to 400, you can. Or, let me back that up. Let's say you're shooting at 200 and maybe it's a little bit too dark at 200 for the setting you've got. You can take the shutter speed and drop it down to 100 and let in twice as much light. So there's two exposures. The people that use flash in here know this. For you that don't use flash, there's two exposures for flash. Your aperture setting is controlled with your flash. That's the amount of power that you can put on the flash to get the aperture setting where you want it at. Your shutter speed is the ambient light, how bright or how dark your image is going to be. So if you're at 200 and it's too dark, drop it down to 100. It's going to be twice as bright as it was at 200. If you got image stabilization lens, I'll give you an example for like 85 millimeter. An 85 millimeter lens, you probably want to hold that at about 1/100. That's the 1 plus a little bit, the focal length, 1/85. So you want to get it to like 1/100. And you can probably hold that there all day long and not get any motion blur. With a flash, you're not going to get any motion blur at all. And in 1/100 is your shutter speed. So if you're at 200 and it's too dark, you can drop it down to where you minimally can hold it and still get a no motion blur, and you can let in twice as much light. If you got an IS lens, or if you're really, really steady, you can drop it down to 85. Maybe drop it down to 60. I've held 85s at 60 all day long. Or a tripod. If you're on a tripod, that's a big help. But I don't want to drag around a tripod. But if you can drop it down to 85, you're letting in more light. If you drop it down to 60, you're still letting in more light. But your flash is still set here, 2.8, whatever it's going to be. That's not going to change unless you change the aperture setting. And then if you do, you got to reset this flash setting to where you want to go. Okay? So everybody understand that. Okay, so last thing I'm going to tell you here. I can't emphasize this enough. I mean, this actually, I was surprised how this came out. I just started writing down whole stops one column, and I started writing down whole stops for shutter speeds in the other column. Go to the last page. Stops. Everybody that's new has got to learn how to do this, and you'd be surprised that once you figure out how to count stops, all that technical jargon that Sue Bryce was afraid of, that I was afraid of, that everybody's afraid of, it starts to make sense because that's what photography is on location. It's all about count stops. So these are speeds of, these are your whole stops. 1.4, 2.0, 2.8, 4.0, 5.6, 8.0, 11, 16, 22. Nobody's going to shoot at 22 unless you want to light up, get Whitby Island back there and focus. But those are your whole stops. Whole stops on shutter speeds on almost all of our cameras is going to be 8,000 as a stop, cut it in half, 4,000 as a stop, cut it in half, 1,000 as a stop. You keep cutting it in half. Probably most of you have your cameras set in thirds. I know I have mine set in thirds. It's just cheating in the stop system. If you were smart, you probably should set it in whole stops. That way you've really got it down and you'll really start counting stops out there quickly. But if I take a test shot and I want 2.8, and if I take a test shot back here and it says 2.8 at, let's say 2,000, okay? That's pretty bright back there. But if it says 2.8 and I'm inside at a reception and I'm below 30, I mean, now you got to crank the ISO up to get that thing back up there. So I was surprised how close these came out because I just did it by accident. Honestly, if I'm outside shooting and I want to shoot wide open with my Sigma lens and I'm shooting at 1.9 2 or 1.5 or 6, and I got a flash lighting up the front side. I got the light behind me. I got the light doing what I'm doing. That shutter speed is going to go to 4,000, 5,000, 8,000 almost every single time I take a picture. I was surprised that happened. If I'm at 2.8 and I'm outside midday and I'm taking photos and I want to shoot at 2.8, that shutter speed in the auto modes, it's going to jump up to right around 1,200, 1,600, 2,000 almost every time. If you're in manual mode and you want to shoot at 2.8 and you want that sky to be no blue and all that kind of stuff, you're going to keep adjusting down. You can line those needles up and it's going to be at 2,000. You're going to turn your flash on to light them from the front side. I was surprised how close that is. So if you learn how to count stops outside and you're walking around and you're in your lighting, you take a test shot of something you know you're at, you can pretty well guess by stops. Okay, I'm at 4.0 and it took it at 160 and my ISO was 400. Okay, I'm going to go down. I'll shoot it at 2.8. I can just drop the ISO. ISO's a stop 100, 200, 400, 800. Same thing with ISO. They all go by stops. So once you learn how to count in stops on location, you're going to know where to set your camera and get them very, 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 very close if you want to shoot in manual mode. If you don't want to shoot in manual mode, you want to shoot in the auto modes, camera's going to do it for you. And all you got to do about with your camera in the auto modes is start playing around with exposure compensation. And it works phenomenal. You can take it and set it at 0, bump it up a third. If it's too dark, you can just bump it up a third. And the camera's going to drop the shutter, open up and drop the shutter speed from 800 to 400. And it's going to look perfect to you. And all you got to do is, at that setting, adjust your light for it and you're on your way. But that's all off-camera flash is outside. It's very, very simple. It's not any harder than that.
Any questions?
Any questions? Please, fire away.
How far from your subjects are you normally setting up?
Depends on the light that I have. So this little guy right here is a game changer for wedding photographers. This is a Colt 45 long throw reflector. When I go shoot weddings, I have 2 of these with me at all times, or I have 2 of these with me at all times. Because this 45 long throw, if I'm going to light my groups up, the young lady with the red hair that's on the bed, okay, I'm about this far away from her. And I'm going to adjust this light to about here. I'm going to put it right about there is where I'm going to put it at. Maybe even a little farther back. This is a 1-to-1 ratio, okay? So I can take this outside and stand this far back, not crowd them, give them their space, and I can go boom. And I can light them in f/16 light all day long with this thing, and I'm going to be at a quarter power. Maybe half if they're out in direct light, maybe half power. And I can light it from head to toe and not look flashy. It's an amazing modifier for photographers. The difference is that I can take this one here about this far away, not worry about it, or I can take this one here. This is a 38. I can bring this one maybe about here. So it's going to do a 38-degree spread. I can take 2 of these side by side, and frankly, I like these 38s better for location work, because I can take it like this. I'm about this far away. I've got them right here, and I can light that whole back wall with 2 lights to match the ambient light that's coming in. I can light that entire back wall with just 2 of these lights because it throws that as a 38-degree spread. And it looks like you're in daylight. It's phenomenal. So these are, for wedding photographers, these are game changers, I think, for me. And I know myself, Brad, and a lot of guys that are using them. Brad's in Florida. He shoots out in that bright, bright sun on the water. This is what they use because if you're outside, it's hard light. It's not soft light. It's hard light. So I'm throwing the hard light right back at them, and you can't tell because you're just matching the light that they're in. You absolutely can't tell a lot of times that it's been flashed because you've matched the ambient lighting behind you.
So, I'm not a wedding photographer. I photograph mainly children and babies.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing about kids is that they're not going to stay where you set up your light. So how do you modify this for a kiddo who's running around?
Oh, you mean like in the area right there?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good question. I think what I would do is I use these a lot.
Yep.
Who knows about SMDV modifiers, right? You guys know about the SDMV or was it SMDVs? Which one is it, you guys? The ones that set up so quickly. You just sit there and push it down, click, 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 and it goes in place. I think it's SMDV. That's the one that everybody's spending $300 for. That you go out and you just come out and you take them out in locations. They're like this, and they put them around. They go snap, snap, snap. They push the buttons in. They put the lid, and it's ready to go. I use these. These are. Yeah, these are one. This is my Mike Mowbray from Mo Lights. These are Go Lights. I use these on location. This is how simple they are. You take this, it's done.
So would you be using that softbox to spread your light first?
Yep.
But then you always have the idea, like a lot of kids want to feather their light just because that's the idea. Girl, you just gotta throw some Ritz crackers on.
Yeah. So here's what I would do. I would throw something like this.
You have an assistant that's going to be manipulating your modifier, which is right.
Yeah, or you could put one of these on. You could get a couple of these. Okay. You could get a couple of these over here. This spreads the light out really well, spreads it out real wide. So you could put a couple of these in here like this and have that whole area lit up and just get on the floor with them and
So
do
really,
it.
you're just creating a bigger space for the lights.
Right. Yeah, that's how I would do it.
The floor and then put them in their shoes.
Yeah, that's how I would do it. But you see how fast that's set up? Did you guys see how fast that's set up? So now if you're doing couples portraits, or you're taking like high school seniors outside and you want really, really soft light on them, you throw one of these on, and now you've got a studio in a box outside. You've got a soft light out there, and you can do your thing like that with them. So that's the great thing about them. They're all on that same trigger. They do automatic high-speed sync. They let you use the auto modes, or you can use the manual modes. You can still go to your manual mode and dial it in where you want it at manual mode, and just fire it away because it'll go to high-speed sync, and that'll do it for you automatically.
Do you use a sandbag outside?
Well, here's the thing. So don't do what I do. Don't do what I do. I have spent so much money fixing lights for like 5 or 6 years. Oh my God. So I learned my lesson. Monfrotto makes a boom stand clamp that you can get. They make a 10-pound to 15-pound. And you can just put it and you clamp it right on here, and it clamps right on the bottom, and it's not going to go anywhere. But even with a 10-pound weight on there, these things catch. These things will catch wind. Oh my God, they're going to catch wind. So if you're using a big mod like this outside, either have a 10-pound weight and still have somebody close by, or have an assistant hold it if you've got that. I shoot by myself, so I use 10-pound weights, and it's a real pain in the ass to drag 10-pound weights around on my little rolling cart outside. So usually if I'm outside, here's what I do. If I'm outside and I'm shooting out in the light, I'm using these things here because I'm shooting hard light aim anyway. They're hard light. And I usually don't break these out until I start shooting real tight shots, like, head and shoulder shots outside for portraits for like a high school senior. Maybe I'm shooting from here up and I want it really, really soft on them. Then I might break these out. But there's another way to get around that too. Because these things, where are they at? Yeah, here we go. Yeah, umbrellas, you don't even want to take an umbrella outside. You just don't want to take an umbrella outside. That's a bad move. Socks. These things all come with socks. So you can put these on here like this. Put a sock on it. Throw a shower cap on it. It really softens it up even more. So now you can take the light and just back your light up. Like if I was going to shoot her, I'd want to back it up like that and just kind of back it up. There you want to get it up back in here and feather some light in there. You don't want a lot, just enough, but it's going to spread it out. Instead of a 30-degree spread with a sock in there, it's going to throw it at about a 100-degree spread, maybe a 120-degree spread. And that spreads your light out. So these socks are they come in very, very handy. When I shot with alien bees, I used all my wedding parties I shot for 4 years. I used 22-inch white beauty dishes outside with vagabonds, with pocket wizards, ND filters so I can get the apertures down to 3.5, 3 stops, and I'm 1600s at full power. And so I did for almost 4 years. And I had 22-inch beauty dishes, and I put the socks on them. So it took that 22 beauty inch, which is about a 65-degree spread, and you put the socks on, it's a 130-degree spread in each thing. It throws a lot of light everywhere. So these socks are really kind of cool. And this will never blow over outside. I've never had one yet. This stand will hold it. So these don't blow over at all. So these work out really, really well. Yeah.
So when you're talking about power and like quarter power and half power, is that independent of like shutter speed and aperture?
Yeah, your the power of your light only affects your aperture setting.
Okay.
So these go from 1/28 to 1:1. That's a lot of power on a 600 light. That's a ton of freaking power. It'll nuke you. You saw when I fired at you what it did.
So when you're setting that up, like what would you, would you start with the power setting? You know, in terms of like.
Yeah, here's what I do. You want to find out, you get a meter TV mode, what's behind you, right? You can know what the ambient light is behind you. You're going to set your camera to that setting, okay? Just turn the light on and set it to a 30-second. It doesn't matter. Take a test shot. Take your picture. If in that setting they look too dim, you're going to take your flash and you're going to cook it up to a 16th or an 1/8. You're just going to move your flash power up a little bit.
Okay.
That's all you're going to do.
It's independent of.
It's
Okay.
independent. This controls, if your subject looks dim at 30-second, at that setting, you're going to bring your power up and it'll match it. And it'll be fine.
Like a helium bead or a flash or anything like that.
Right, right, right. And then now manual photography, manual lighting versus TTL lighting. TTL lighting, the camera is going to really dial it in for you. Whereas manual, the camera's going to dial what you're going to do. Through the lens lighting, TTL, ETTL, I think it's invaluable. I use it a lot. It really helps dial in the exposures when you're on the move. So you can buy these things here that will do TTL lighting for you, and you might want to shoot them in TTL. That way you're just going, you could set it at 0, like in the scenario that she just had. You could set it at 0 and take a shot. And if it looks too bright, go down -1/3, go down -2/3. It's the same thing as going down from 16th to a 16th and 3rd to an 1/8. It's the same thing. I prefer manual fast when I'm outside because I don't want them to look flashy. I don't want them to look flashy at all if I can help it. So I prefer manual fast so I can have it. The other thing too is the outside, and John's going to go over this right now. Don't shoot your flash directly at them. So well, group shots I do. Yeah, I'm standing far in the back. When you start shooting flash directly at them, it looks flashy. So see here, this is your light right here. And John's going to talk about this right here. This is your light spread. So could you stand right there?
Yeah.
So if I'm shooting her, she's going to be lit from here over, right? Like that. And maybe it looks hot on her. All you got to do, this light's going to spread out. So all you do is just feather the light off her a little bit. Pull the light a little bit off her and take the shot again. It's going to decrease the intensity on her, and it might not look very flashy. So sometimes you're on location, it's just a matter of just doing something like this and retaking the shot, and it's like, oh my God, look at that.
And that's called feathering the light.
That's called feathering. Yeah, that's called feathering the light.
The side portion of the light.
This is directly on her. This is directly on her. And the other thing, too, if the light's too bright, you're right here. Oh, God, my light's too bright, right? If you don't want to screw around with your thing, take the shot again. Oh, look at that. It's perfect.
But also something to remember is the closer your light is, the softer the light
That's
is.
true.
The
Yeah.
further away from your subject
And
point,
John has
the
got it.
I'll cover all that.
John will cover that right now. So I'm going to about turn this over to John because he's going to give you the technical side of this. It's so invaluable. Is there any questions before I step out? Anybody got any questions?
I have probably a stupid question.
Nope.
Looking at the whole stops and shutters. So are these with ambient light in, or is this just straight daylight, like if you didn't have any flash coming in?
That's your camera setting. So,
But like, so the camera setting for,
okay, so these are the lens that you put on the camera. Like my Sigma lens is a 1.2 lens. That's where that 1.4 comes in. Dane, where's your 7200? Dane's got a 7200 here. That's a 2.8 lens, so that starts at 2.8. Okay, so but that's camera stops. So the amount of light that hits your sensor, the camera measures that and stops. Depending on the lens that you have on, most of us have 2.8 lens, so it would go 2.8. 4.0's the next stop up. 5.6 is the next. The shutter, yeah, those numbers aren't in correlation to anything. They're just stops. They are just stops. But when I put this together, I was really surprised because the daylight rule, guys, the daylight flash rule, the daylight rule is f16 at 125. That's your daylight rule, okay?
Sunny
So that F16 at 125 means you can go outside any time of the day, midday, anytime you want, and take a picture at F16 at 125, and it's going to be exposed, period. It's just a law of photography. So if you're at F16 at 125, follow me here. You're at F16 at 125. Who wants to deliver a picture at F16 at 125? Nobody, right? So back it up. Where's 16? So we're going to go 11, 8, 5, 6, 4, 0. How many stops is that? 4 stops, right? 2, 8, 5 stops. So if you're in F16 daylight and you don't want to deliver at F16 at 125, you want to deliver at, say, 4.0. You're going to set your camera at 4.0, right? And then count up from 125. You're going to go to 250, 500, 100, 1,000, 2,000. That's your setting. 4.0 at 2,000. If that was an F16 at 125, that's what it is. So if you're out in location, you're taking pictures, and you take your shot, and it's like, God, F11, right? No problem. Count your stop back and move your shutter speed up. You've got your setting, but you got to have high speed to do that. So that's the advantage of counting stops. I learned that from Cliff Mountner. The guy's a walking light meter. He can just walk outside. He looks outside and he says, that's so and so. Yeah, it is. Geez, amazing. But they know how to count stops. Gionis, Mountner, Don Giannotti, all these guys, they know the stops like near the back of their heads. And when you start learning how to count stops, you're going to go out there and take your test shots or take your meter readings. I mean, do you know anybody use a light meter outdoor anymore?
I don't know, I don't go outside.
Yeah, I mean, I never go outside anymore. I mean, just don't take it. I use the light meter in the studio all the time, but I never take a light meter outside. It's just a pain in the butt. It's just much easier to put it in TV, know exactly what it is at that setting. So typically I set it for 125 is what I set it because that's the daylight rule. I'll set it for 125, take a shot, and it's going to say 11.0. I don't want to deliver an image at 11.0. I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to take 11.0, I'm going to count backwards. 8, 5, 6, 4.0, 2.8. I'm going down 4 stops. That means to get there, I got to put my aperture at 2.8, and instead of 125, I'm going to go, what is it, 200? 250, 5, it could be around 1,200 is where I'm going to be at on that chart. And once you understand that, you know exactly where to set these out. You can walk up there and with your customers, even if you're manual mode shooter, you can walk up there and go, oh yeah, put them over there, take your shot for your lights, and 2 shots, you're ready to go. You're going to train yourself to be that fast. It's really that simple. I mean,
It just takes practice.
Yeah, it takes practice.
Trial and error.
Just a trial and error. It's that simple.
You have digital, so you can actually see the results.
Exactly.
You're not $8 clips.
Yeah, you know, if you knew how much money I wasted at your age shooting film cameras, honest to God, we used to go outside with film cameras and we would know what the settings were and we would have strings based on the lights and we'd have to take the string in and we'd say, stand here. And we'd stand here and we'd take pictures. That's how we used to have to do it because we couldn't see what was going on. So, but it really is that simple. So don't pay anybody. You now know what I know. It's that simple. And all you got to do now is go out and do a little practice, and you got it down. I'm telling you, 30 minutes outside with a model, and you'll figure it out. And the next time you go out with a model, 30 minutes, you'll figure out how to feather the lights, and you'll be an expert at it, just like Dan, just like me, just like Dane, just about you in the room. It's not that hard. It's really very, very simple to do. Okay? We'll turn it over to John.
Hello, everyone. Come on in closer if you want. We can turn that couch around too. Make sure you can see the screen. I'm going to talk more about theory of lights, how light works, and how to get yourself out of trouble in situations and things like that. So I'm not going to say this is how I light it, more this is why I light it this way, or this is why I place lights where I do, and hopefully you'll find yourself in situations you can think back, okay, I need to fix this. How am I going to do that? This is part of a class I do for glazers. I'm doing it at the WPPI in the Interfit booth. And I also, if anyone's interested, I've put it all into a book form. And I've got a few of these here with me. They're normally $30 on Amazon, plus tax and shipping. I can sell them for $25 here, including tax. So at the end, if anyone's interested, we can talk about that. The full class goes over all these things on the screen, but I think today we're going to talk mostly about the depth and spread of light, quality of light, and a few other things about light, and maybe get into perspective and focal length, because perspective is my favorite topic to talk about because everyone gets it wrong. And we have Brea over here to heckle. So I'm going to skip over the aspect ratio stuff. I'm going to skip over some backgrounds. And let's talk about, I'm going to even skip depth of field. Everyone understand depth of field? Wide open, things are soft, and far away there. As you stop down, things get more in focus. One thing about depth of field that most people don't understand is that the same aperture, all lenses have the same depth of field when the subject's the same. So there's 35 millimeter, 85 millimeter, and 135 at f2, and they all have the same depth of field because they move the camera in closer to maintain the subject's distance. So when someone tells you a wider angle lens has more depth of field, it does when you use it at the same position. But once you're moving closer to fill the frame, the depth of field is the same as the long or the normal lens. So just wanted to get that out of the way. Even at 22, see all three lenses have the same depth of field when the subject's the same size. Skip over that stuff there. Depth of light. This is the one that most people don't talk about. And I'm kind of go against something that Mike said at the end here. You set your light to subject distance for the depth of light you want, and then you leave the light there. You don't move the light back and forth to control the power. Sorry, Mike. Comes from the inverse square law. It says the power of light is inversely proportional to the distance from the light. So if you double the distance from the light, you get 1/4 the amount of light, not half. And hopefully you can see that from this diagram. It's as if you have a 4x5 print and an 8x10 print. It takes 4 4x5s to cover the 8x10, not 2, because you're spreading out in 2 directions. So don't worry about the math of inverse square law. Just remember that the closer the light is to your subject, the darker the background is going to be. So a distant lamp or the sun illuminates a greater area with its intensity a constant across the scene. The same amount of light hits the top of Mount Everest as the bottom of Death Valley. When you're outside, you know, I'm in Seattle, so say I'm on Lake Union, the same amount light is hitting Gasworks Park as the Aurora Bridge in the background. And that's the main difference between indoor and outdoor. Indoor, we can't usually get the lights far enough away to let the light not fall off. There's always going to be some fall off inside. So it's very difficult to simulate sunlight in the studio. It's going to take a lot of lights at different distances, and it's a real pain, and don't even bother trying to do it. So a light closer to your subject, such as in the studio, is limited coverage, and the light levels fall off rapidly. So in here, the shot on the left, the light's in close to the subject, and you'll see the background's gone gray. It's a white seamless background. And on the right, I've moved the light about 48 inches instead of 24 inches, so doubling the distance, and you'll see the background's gotten brighter. So that's what happens when you move the light in and out. And you'll see a couple of other things. On the one where the lights move back, the highlight on her nose and her forehead are stronger. They're smaller and brighter. This is going to sound backwards to you, but if you want to make your highlights less powerful, bring the light in closer. The further the light is away, the smaller the light is. The smaller the light is, the more concentrated those highlights are. Those highlights are like mirror reflections. They're the same brightness as the light, no matter what distance the light is from the subject. So when the light's far away, that light is really bright, and the whole scene is bright, and you have to open up your aperture or turn up the power of the flash to expose the whole scene. As you bring in the light really close to the subject, that highlight is staying the same brightness. So you're going to have to lower your aperture or change your exposure amount to bring the skin back down, and that evens out the tone between them. Plus the highlight's gotten bigger and spread out and is less noticeable. So if you're seeing these bright highlights on the nose and forehead and the like, in addition to patting down with some makeup or clay sheets, bring the light in closer. Same thing with daylight through a window. When the subject's close to the window, the light falls off quickly. When the subject's way across the room from the window, the light evens out across the whole scene. So even in here, if I was going to take photos, I'd probably be within a foot or two of the window and have this really nice fall off. And you can see that on the people right here, like your side of your face is bright and the other side's dark there. But when we look back at Brea there, it's just evenly lit all across. Everyone back there is evenly lit. It's because the light is so far away from them. As you get closer to the light, it gets softer, but it also falls off gradually. So in close, you have close subject contrast and fall off. Out distance, you have low contrast. Everything's lit up equally. If some of you shoot product photography, maybe you can see it better on this. On the first one, the light is 40 inches away from the can, and you see it has this really bright stripe through it. You can't read the text through it. I double half the distance to 20 inches. The stripe has gotten brighter. You can read a little more. And when it's in only 10 inches away, you can still see it's a highlight in that the can is round, where you can read through the text on the can. And we use this for group portraits too. By pulling the light away, I can light a group of people with one light and a reflector with it feathered. So you see I'm not pointing the light directly at the group. I'm kind of pointing it at the person that's farthest away and just let the sides of the light so it evens out things across. What do I want to say about feathering? Does not make the light softer, because if you look when you feather, you're turning the light, it's getting smaller and smaller. So it's in more contrasty light, but it's covering the subject a little better. So everything in photography is a trade-off. But basically what it comes down to is set the lights to subject distance to give the depth you want, then select the modifier size for character. Can you do this with speed lights? Yes. But you have subject contrast because speed lights are small and they're always small light sources. They have hard directional light with strong sharp shadows. So I just avoid speed lights whenever I can. I'm getting old. I can't see the buttons on the back. They're small. The batteries die at the wrong time, things like that. And speaking of that, I have a bunch of speed light modifiers here that are for sale if anyone wants them. I'll give them to you real cheap. So let's go on to quality of light. That's where we have either hard or soft light. The larger the light source, as seen by the subject, the softer the light. I see a lot of people get started and they'll buy a 24, 32-inch umbrella or so, and they'll set it up 15 feet away from the subject. And they say, oh, I put this in an umbrella and it looks just like my speed light pictures. It's because that far away, the light is tiny. I say, hold your hand out in front of you to the light. If you can block the light, it's a small light. So when the light's right here, like the softbox here, it's a soft light. But if this light's 10 feet away, I can block it with my hand, and it's going to be casting shadows. So what are we looking at? We have the diffuse reflections, which is the true tonality, the skin of your subject, the clothes they're wearing, if you're outdoors, the trees, that's what we base our exposure on. Then we have shadows, which are the areas that are not lit and are underexposed. And we have the specular reflections that I mentioned before. They're mirror-like and the brightness doesn't change with distance. So going back to inverse square, I said that as you change the distance, the power of the light changes. And now I'm saying with specular that the light doesn't change with the distance. So is that wrong? No, because what happens here is if you change the distance, the specular highlights get bigger and smaller, inversely proportional to the distance. So they're just following it backwards. So, as I said, if you want to get rid of the highlights, bring it in closer. Don't confuse brightness with harshness. The light's not going to get harsh when you bring it in if it's a big light. If it's a small speed light, it's going to be harsh no matter where you put it, unless you put a modifier on it. Hard light comes from a small source. It gives great definition and dimension. It's easily controlled, has dramatic shadows, and it doesn't fall off quickly, like a spotlight in a theater. Soft light comes from a large light source as seen by the subject. It falls off quickly, provides its own fill, and can spill around the studio quite a bit, so it can sometimes be hard to control. There's a little diagram showing the difference between like a speed light and a softbox. So the light doesn't wrap, light travels in straight lines, but on a large light source, there's light coming from many different angles that end up filling in. So when we say light wraps, it's not bending, it's just coming from many areas. And it says as you move the big light back, it becomes smaller and smaller. So there's what hard light looks like. There's some medium light from a softbox, and there's from a big 7-foot umbrella like back there right behind the camera. And on a human, hard light from an off-camera speed light, and go into a softbox, then go into the big umbrella. And I want you to use all of your light modifiers. You know, a lot of us have gone out and bought those 7-foot umbrellas. If you put a speed light in it, that's how much of the umbrella it lights. Yeah, because speed lights have Fresnel lenses in them and they're concentrated. So comparing to the bottom to a studio strobe in the same umbrella. You can help the little lights if people have Stofan diffusers, these type of things. If you put that on your speed light, it'll spread the light to fill the umbrella, but it's going to cut out a lot of light. But that's one way to work with a speed light. On the far right one there, I took out the diffusion panel on my speed light and brought it down, and that helped fill the umbrella a little bit. I'm going to go into diffusion first, but any questions on any of that so far? Yeah.
So when you do group portraits,
Uh-huh.
does it really make a difference whether you have one of these, like a 7-inch reflector versus a 3-foot softbox? If it's really far
If I'm
away?
doing groups, I try to go as big a light as possible. Like yesterday, I did a group of 5. I used just a 42-inch umbrella. A couple of months ago, I did a group of 60, and I used a 7-foot umbrella, and I have that photo in here, so we'll get to the groups in a little bit and see if we cover it then. So diffusion. Diffusion spreads light over a wider area, as Mike was saying. Diffusion right on the lens does not soften the light as the light stays the same size. You know, since the 60s, I'm showing my age, people have been telling, oh, you shoot weddings, you put a handkerchief over the flash, it diffuses the light. That was to make the light cover a wide angle lens, you know, wider, because the lenses then didn't, the flashes then didn't zoom in and out. It didn't do anything to soften the light at all, because the light is still the same size. But if you're in a room like this and you're working in a corner with someone, maybe the light will bounce off the wall. If you have low ceilings, maybe it'll bounce off the ceiling a little bit. So you may get a little bit of fill from a diffuser right on the flash, but really not much at all. Things like the Stofan were created to spread the beam so you can work with shorter lenses. And as I just said, it might help bounce things around. Grids are the opposite of fusion. A grid narrows the output of a light by maintaining its size. Yeah, you can spin that light around. That one has a grid on it. So the grid keeps the light from spreading wider. So if you want to concentrate light on someone in the studio, you can use the grid. So to diffuse or not. So here there's no diffusion on the light. Here I've put a sheet of diffusion material directly on the light. I'm just using a 7-inch reflector. So you'll see the shadows on the face stayed pretty much the same, but the light did spread a bit more and hit a little more of the background. But if I move the light back from the diffusion, now the light source became bigger and we have a softer light. So here's the diagram of those 3 photos. So one is just a small reflector like we showed before, and it's putting the diffusion like the sock over it. And then by separating the light from the diffusion, that's using one of those pop-up reflectors. I think Brea has one around here somewhere. I don't think I brought any. So a simple solution, if you don't want to buy a softbox, you can just set up a scrim, and depends on where you position your light, you can control the size of the light. And then you don't need to buy 5 different size softboxes.
And scrim is just like a large diffusion panel.
Yeah, it could be.
As a go-between.
Yeah, it could be a shower curtain. You know, you can get by, when I use shower curtains, I tend to get cloth shower curtains so I don't melt them. Though, like the Godox lights and this interfit down here have like a 10-watt LED, so they're not going to burn anything. And even these new Honey Badgers have a 60-watt LED, which is as bright as a 300-watt incandescent light, but it doesn't get hot. It's nice. I can change reflectors now without burning my hands. So what this all comes down to is select the size of the light to give the character you want, but don't move the lights to change its size. So any questions on that part of it? Doing good? Okay. We can quickly talk about height of the light. It usually comes from above the subject, not below. Raise your light so its center is above the eyes. Watch the nose shadows and watch the eye sockets. So if we put it on a clock, I tend to light from like between 10 and 2 o'clock coming from above. Direction of light, if you light from the front, you're going to get flat with no shadows or textures. Great for evening out skin tones, filling in pores. Beauty light's usually coming from the front. If you're over on the edge or the side, it emphasizes texture, the old fisherman light, and the back silhouettes the figure. As you move lights up and down or left or right, remember the shadows move in the opposite direction that you're moving your light. So if you're trying to kill a shadow, come around in front of it, not go behind it. There's the horizontal lighting clock. So we have different lighting patterns. I've never had a subject come in and ask for a specific lighting pattern. This is kind of old stuff, but it helps to know it. So you have split light, Rembrandt light, loop light, and flat beauty, paramount, butterfly. It has many names for the straight-on light. And these are done with a hard light so you can really see the shadows, and then we'll go into a softbox, a little softer light. It's a little bright in here. It's hard to see the exact details on this, but I think you get the idea of the lighting patterns. And there they are compared to each other. So split lights directly on the side of the subject. Rembrandt comes around to the front a little bit and goes up higher, and it's casting a nose shadow that meets the corner of the mouth and gives that triangle on the face. Loop light comes back down a little bit and a little more to the front. It's probably the most used flattering lights. And then the butterfly is from the front. So where to place the light. Watch the shadow from the bridge of the nose and make sure it doesn't darken the corner of the eye. So my lights will look around too much to the side. You see the shadow of the nose is creeping into the eye. So bring the light around front a little more. The whole eye is lit up. Feathering. Feathering points the light ahead of the subject. It makes it a little less harsh and a little more even. And then I bounce a card to fill in the other side. And you'll see that my bounce card is closer to the camera, not to the shoulder of the subject. If the bounce card is by the shoulder, you're lighting the ear, and you're getting a dark spot in between. By bringing the light around by the lens, it just makes the light flow around the subject without getting a shadow by the nose. Broad and short light. Broad light is with the subject facing away from the light. Short light's the subject facing towards the light. It's usually more flattering, but both can work. So the way I usually say for people, tell your subject, here's your light, here's your camera, keep your nose pointed between them and it's good. And that gives you the short light. And if you have someone with a really round face or wide face, it helps really narrow it down. If you have someone with a really narrow face, you may want to consider going to broad light. Broad light is also great for eyeglasses because the light is pointing the other direction. Remember, angle of incidence equals angle of reflection. So if this light was pointing at me from there to a camera straight ahead, that reflection is going to go right back at the person, into the camera. But if I move that light up so the reflection hits my glasses and goes below the camera, we've gotten rid of the reflection in the glasses. Or if I turn this way, the reflection's going out there and the camera's over there. So there's some examples. So on the first one, we see the reflection. On the second one, I've just raised the light up a little higher. And on the third one, I just pointed the face away from the light.
That's huge in studio, man. That's really.
Yeah.
It's such a pain to fix.
Yeah.
Don't mess it up.
Or you find subjects that have really good anti-reflective coatings.
Transition lenses.
Transition lenses are a real pain because they sometimes take too long. You know, sometimes you only have 5 minutes with a person. They just came in from outside and their glasses stay dark.
I've had studio lighting actually.
Just set them off too.
Like they stand in front of a steady light and it, like,
Yeah, that's where some of these, like the S1, and if it only has a 10-watt modeling light, it's not going to do it, but the brighter modeling light on this one will. That's lit pretty much butterfly. There's a large, maybe a 60-inch soft lighter umbrella, diffused umbrella overhead, and then the eyelighter, the Westcott eyelighter below. But I managed to get rid of all the glare in the glasses. I do know some photographers who always take a few shots with the glasses off so they have an eye to retouch in later. Seems like a lot of work, but it works for some people. In the old days, they used to say, pop the lenses out of the glasses, but how do I do that to these?
I just have them lower their chin.
Yeah, lower the chin a little bit. Yeah.
Just have them drop their chin so go a bit down and then it goes away.
Or push the glasses all the way back.
Yeah, and that's another, all the time anyway, just keep pushing back, because most of us let our glasses slide down during the day, and got to remember to push them back up there.
even a slight tilt. So
Yeah.
Like just even a slight tilt.
Yeah.
the sides happen to-
You can usually get rid of the glasses.
Test shot, make sure it's done.
I just always forget.
Yeah, we don't have to rely on Polaroids anymore. It's much cheaper now. So fill cards. Fill cards shouldn't be too high as it needs to fill in the shadows that you're getting from below. And so I usually angle it up a little bit. And as I showed before, I have it around towards the front of the camera. Placing the fill card there. So you see the fill card on this one, the light keeps wrapping around, and on that side it's too far to the side and it ends up lighting her ear, which becomes more distracting. I'm going to probably take that down in post, so why not do it to begin with? So yeah, I don't put the fill card back in that area. Let's see, I'm going to skip over that thing. Problem areas, dark eyes, long nose shadows. Dark eyes, they have really pronounced eyebrow ridge. You're going to have to bring your light a little lower and get the light up in there. Long nose shadow, bring the light around towards the front more so it doesn't cast a shadow. You don't want a double nose shadow for multiple lights, so I usually fill with cards instead of a second light. We showed you the nose shadow in the eye. We showed the bright ears, the bright spots, and emphasizing wrinkles. So catch lights, this is always a fun subject to talk about. Catch lights are the highlight specular reflection in the surface of the eyeball. They make the eye look alive. The shape is determined by the key light. And yes, you can have multiple catch lights unless you're in a camera club competition. For me, I like rectangular catch lights. They look like doors or windows or a big sky. You know, everyone says, oh, you want a round reflector or round modifier so you get a natural catch light. Yeah, the sun's around, but how often do we see the sun reflecting in someone's eyes? They're usually blinking or tearing up or looking the other way. So I'm not a big fan of round catch lights, but you know, it's a personal thing. I also put tape across the front of my softbox so that the catch lights look like a window. I don't know if you can see it in there, but if you look at that, so I just put some masking tape across the fronts there. You know, the round catch lights remind me of department store pictures. This is me at about 6 years old and Macy's or Gimbel's or someplace out on the East Coast. And that's why I talk so fast. I'm from the East Coast. I've been here 25 years and I haven't lost that. Big pupil syndrome is the other one here that we talk about. Without modeling lights, the pupil of the eye dilates and gets really big. Some people like that. It's said that when you're in intimate situations with people and in dark situations, or you're with someone that's attractive, your eye dilates. So psychologists, yeah, right. So psychologists say that big pupils are more attractive. I happen to like irises in the color. So, what's that? I don't know. Maybe. Yeah. So I prefer to see some of the iris, and that you get by having a brighter modeling light to make the eye constrict instead of dilate. We talked about group portraits a bit. So there's the group portrait. I think there's 64 people in there. This is the Pan Pacific Hotel down on Denny and Westlake. Someone before we were here was talking about 500 watt second strobes being enough. This is 2400 watt second strobe into one umbrella. It's ISO 100 at f11. So I can get everyone in the back and focus. I did add a second 500 watt second light on the side just to try to give some dimension, but I don't really think it added much to it. So there you can see the setting there. There's the camera with the 7-foot umbrella above it and the main strobe. So I was probably about 15 feet back from everyone. But having that much power into the big umbrella was, as I said, f11 at ISO 100. I come from the film days. I rarely go above ISO 100. I realize I can now, but it just, my brain doesn't want to do it. No, don't change that ISO. So just overall, side light emphasizes texture, front light smooths things out, and the back light creates silhouettes. We can probably skip over color of light for now. Yeah, please. Yeah. Now for a group shot, I'm pretty much direct on because there's going to people, if I put the light to a side, someone's going to cast shadows on the people next to them or on the people behind them. So you want to get it up and pretty centered. When you've got a group like that, it's not about being creative and artistic. It's about getting everyone lit. Yeah. Sure.
So it's pretty, they go pretty far back, right?
The people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How is it, I mean, I guess they're a little bit darker as a plan, but
Because the light is further away. The further away the light is, the more even it is across the scene.
okay.
If I brought the light real close to the people in front, the people in the back would be completely underexposed. So, I mean, ideally I would have liked to go back another 5 feet with the light here, but I ran into a wall there. But yeah, the further the light is from your subject, it's like when you have an on-camera flash at a wedding and you take someone's picture that's 10 feet away and the wall behind them is all lit up. But if you come up to them so you're only 2 feet away, the wall behind them goes black because the light is more concentrated up front. You had to change the exposure for the people in the front, and that lowered the exposure on the back. So as you back the light away, it gets wider spread and more even spread. Let's see, color. RAW versus JPEG. When the first one was shot in the wrong white balance in RAW and JPEG rather, and then I tried to correct it, and the best correction I can get was the one on the right there. The one in the middle was shot in RAW and corrected from that first one. So there's one of your reasons. Yeah, I mean, I don't get into the whole thing. You can shoot whatever you want. It just makes life easier for you. Accurate color is not always pleasing color. So you can use your gray cards. I have gray cards and I shoot them. And then I usually change it from there anyway and probably warm it up a little bit. Perspective, this is my favorite subject, so I'll go in through it a little bit here. Camera subject distance controls perspective, not lenses. The focal length has nothing to do with perspective. So here, when you change the distance between your camera and the subject, it changes the relationship between the objects in the scene, which is the perspective. What is closer to your camera always appears larger than what's further away. When you're in close, the differences are exaggerated. So if I'm 2 feet away from someone, their nose is big, their eyes are smaller, and their ears are even smaller. But I'm 10 feet away from them, now their eyes, ears, and nose are all about the same size. Doesn't matter what lens I'm looking at. So if you look at someone completely across the room for you, across everyone, the people next to you look far apart, the people at the other end look closer together, even though they're same distance apart. And you're not changing lenses or anything, it's just what perspective does.
Did you talk about lens perspective for them too?
Yeah, so here we go. Different lenses at the same distance, the relationship remains the same. The subject and size is just different. So let's take a trip out to the shrinking Space Needle. Yeah. A friend of mine posted these pictures on Facebook, and she said, I'm kind of obsessed with this optical illusion from the window of my new floor at work. When I first get off the elevator, the Space Needle looks ginormous, and as I walk towards the window, it gets tiny. My team might be questioning my sanity as I keep walking back and forth going, whoa. So here's what happens. I took all 3 of these pictures with a 24mm lens on a full frame camera. At the elevator, you see the Space Needle is filling the window down there. As I'm halfway down the hallway, it's gotten really small, and when I get to the window, it's tiny. So what's really happening here? The Space Needle stayed the exact same size in all the pictures. What's changed is the size of the window. The window is really the subject of the picture here. So if I step back again to the elevator and use a 24mm lens and then crop it and then shoot it with a 105mm from the same position, you'll see the perspective is the same. Had nothing to do with the lens. It's all about the distance. Back to our portraits. Here we have, let's see, the camera is 16.5 inches from the subject with a 105mm lens. Same distance with the 57, same distance with the 24. Notice the perspective did not change on the person. I just changed lenses so they have different coverage. Here I've moved the camera back to 48 inches, again with the 105, the 51, and the 24. I mean, all the lens is doing is changing the magnification and how much a field of view there is. It's not changing the perspective in any way.
Lost our boobs, that's pretty good.
What's that? Yeah, oh well. Here we are at 77 inches. Yeah. So, perspective comes from where the camera is positioned, the height of the camera, tilting versus level, and we could talk about fixing a crooked nose. We talk about people take group pictures and they're always worried the people on the ends are stretched out. That distortion is because you're too close. And you're forced to use a wide angle lens, but it's not really the lens that's doing that. Let me see if I can pop out of here for a second to bridge. So let's, come on, bridge. Yeah, well, I'm getting. That's what I'm going to show here if I can get bridge to work. There it is. So I've took these pictures of these two tennis balls sitting on the floor with a 16 millimeter lens in really close. And you can see that the one in the corner is really stretched out. And that's because it's a 3D item. I took a picture of the center tennis ball and put the picture in the corner. It doesn't stretch. Because the lens in the 3D is seeing both the top and the side, and it's making it look like it's stretched out. So it's really not the lens that's doing it, it's that you're too close. I can give you a reference, a Leica white paper on perspective sometime if you want, if anyone's interested in the math and all that stuff about it. It's just, nope, good. Let's see. Yeah, for those who shoot outside, here's the same thing. This was shot with an 18 to 400 millimeter zoom lens in Kyoto. And you notice that the perspective of the purple area, which is common to all 4 scenes, is exactly the same because I didn't move the camera. So it's, remember, it's the lens. It's not the lens, it's the distance. Let's go back to the... Let's see, and hit play. Not used to using a trackball. So, yeah, the idea with groups is to get back as far as you can and use as long a lens as you can. All lenses show the same perspective from the same camera position, just that short lenses tempt you to move closer and long lenses forces you to move back. My favorite Ansel Adams quote, "A good photograph is knowing where to stand." So pick the camera subject to distance first, then pick the focal length that fills the frame, and don't let the lens dictate your positioning. Zoom with your feet, you can't do it. Let's just jump over that one. Okay, so here I've got the same lens at about 36 inches and at 17 inches. 17 inches, 36 inches, same lens. So both of these are taken with a 24 millimeter lens, except this one here I backed up and cropped in. Let's see what happens here. The camera to subject distance is the same in all of the above images. So shooting with lenses from 24 to 200 and the face looks the same. The ones with the wider angle are lower quality because I had to really blow them up. But again, I'm just driving home the point that it's the distance, not the lens. It's my pet peeve, sorry if I go over and over this, but all of these pictures were made with the same 24 millimeter lens, but at different distances. And to show you what's happening there, when you're in close, the nose is big, you can't even see around the side of the head, and as you back up, everything flattens out, and you can see the ears and things behind. So here's, should be an animation. The one you have on your camera. So 35 millimeter and 135 at 90 inches. The face is exactly the same. The 35, yes, has a lot more depth of field, but a lower quality because I had to really enlarge it. Here we are at the camera at 16 and 132 inches. And that's all coming from changing the distance. So as I said, pick the camera subject for the look you want, then pick the focal length to fill the frame. Can you zoom? Yeah, yeah. Right. Can you zoom with your feet? No. Zooming or even changing prime lenses is equivalent to cropping optically. It does the same thing that you would happen to use if you cropped in Photoshop. Maintains the relationship between objects in the scene is not a natural situation. Cinematographers tend to hate zoom lenses because if you zoom in on someone in a movie, in a film, them and the stuff on the wall are all getting bigger at the same time. But in reality, if I move in closer to someone, the people in the background are going to get smaller. And that pretty much says that. So once you move your feet and move the camera, you're making what they call in film a dolly move, which is much more natural. The relationship between the objects in the scene changes. And we can see that here. The dolly zoom in movies like Vertigo. This one here is from Goodfellas. So watch them sitting at the table and watch the scene in the background. So what's happening here is the camera is being pulled back, but the lens is being zoomed in. So they're maintaining the same size there at the table, but the stuff in the background is changing. And that's what happens when you dolly zoom. So exposure, I think Mike covered quite a bit of it. It's just a balancing act between aperture, time, ISO, and light. Aperture, we select for the depth of field. Shutter speed or flash duration is to stop motion. ISO sensitivity determines how clean the images are. And then our equipment determines how much light we can supply. So let's see if there's... We talked about flash sync before. The shutter opens fully, the flash fires, the shutter closes. I think that'll run again. If you go above your sync speed, the shutter starts to open, the second curtain starts to close, then the flash fires and you have a black band across your photo. So if you're getting black bands with your strobe, that's what's happening. We showed this slide before, what happens at the different shutter speeds. So you can see even at a 200 it's starting to get a dark band at the bottom. This is a Canon 5D3 with a Pocket Wizard trigger. So I usually shoot at 1/25th in the studio. There's the difference between regular sync speed and high-speed sync. High-speed sync, as the shutter curtains are moving, the flash is firing rapidly. It's too fast for our eyes to see it. It lowers the output of the flash quite a bit, so you run through batteries a lot more. It's also really tough on the flash tube, but it's going to lessen the life of the flash tube. But flash tubes last almost forever. I have 40-year-old strobes that are still going strong. Yeah.
That's why with the speed light, you get a high-speed sync outside, you get 500, 800.
Yeah, you might have to be about 12 inches away.
That's why you need the bigger strobes outside, because what you show right there is it disrupts it. It just sucks the power right out of your light.
So it allows the flash to operate at the faster shutter speed, but as I said, it lowers the power, it can overheat, lowers the battery life, and lowers the flash tube lifespan. High-speed sync makes it possible to work outdoors, as Mike said, at low apertures in sunlight. It can also be used in the studio if you need to go down to 1.4 and say your flash only goes down to f4 or so. By putting it to high-speed sync mode and going up to 1600th, 3200th of a second, it's going to knock the power of the flash down, and you'll be able to do that. So here I was only able to go to f4 with my normal strobe, which was an Interfit S1, but by putting in high-speed mode at a 3200th of a second, I was able to go down to 1.4 to get that look. High-speed sync is not used to freeze motion. And I keep reading people saying, oh, I'm glad I got high-speed sync now. I can do jump shots. I can do liquid pours. That's really controlled by the flash duration. So there's a speed light at a 1/5 of a second in normal sync. There's the speed light at a 4,000th of a second in high-speed sync. So let's go back and look at it. At a 1/5 of a second in normal sync, it's pretty much stopped the motion of the fan. At a 4,000th of a second in high-speed sync, it has not. Because the high-speed sync, it's firing that flash multiply, so you get a stuttering, but it's stuttering so fast that it just looks like motion blur. There's a strobe at a 1/2 second, studio strobe at normal sync, at a 60th of a second normal sync. So you can see, even though it's a long shutter speed, the flash is what's stopping the motion. Let's see, you can also go to slow shutter speeds and drag the shutter. You run the risk of motion blur if the subject's moving, such as at a wedding thing like this. Sometimes it's a mistake, sometimes it's what you're trying to do. But here I shot at an 1/8 of a second, so the flash captured the person, but the ambient light captured the motion of their hands moving around. Here I used an old studio strobe that is only a 300th of a second flash duration, and you could see that the dancer, she jumped into his arms, her feet were still moving, and you caught the blur. If I was using the Godox or the Interfit, those go up to like a 9,000th of a second flash duration, so they'll stop all that motion. Any questions about first curtain or second curtain sync and what they do? Let's just show you some examples here. We're going to do a moving car. It's going to be a little toy car in this example. So first curtain sync, the flash fires, then the subject moves and blurs. but it makes it look like the subject's moving backwards. With second curtain sync, you record the blur first, and then the flash stops the subject, and it looks like it's going the right direction. So that's the basic difference between first and second curtain sync. Yeah.
Certain flashes can't do second curtain sync. Is that true, or like on the go-out scope, can they do that?
I don't know about the Godos. The interfit, yes, on the remote control, there's a switch for first or second curtain sync, and most speed lights can do it. Canon and Nikon may be different. I know, like on Nikon, I think the cameras automatically go into high-speed sync. Where Canon, you have to switch it in on the flash. I'm not sure. I'm a Canon shooter, so Mike maybe someone else may be able to answer questions about the Nikon side of thing. I think most, yeah.
You had mentioned, I saw a note that
Yeah.
set your flash to second curtain by default.
Yes. Yeah, you can do that, as I said, on the switch on the camera. And it's the same thing with high-speed sync. You can turn it on your flash, and if the flash is below the sync speed, it's going to work normally. If it's above the sync speed, then it's going to pop into high-speed flash. So it doesn't hurt you to keep them turned on.
So as like at a wedding, I would only turn on second curtain if I was going to that kind of
Yeah.
blur effect. But you're saying to leave it that way all the time.
Because if you're not going for that blur effect and you're at a higher shutter speed, it's not going to make any difference.
Right.
It's only once you get down to like a 30th of a second or lower that it's going to open. You're going to see time between.
If you get some motion blur, it's going to look better.
Yeah, I think so. At least for things that are moving in a specific direction. For the dancer, it probably doesn't make any difference which direction their blurs go. So for a wedding,
They're going to be walking backwards.
right. Let's see. Anything else here? We talked about light meters. If you have one, use it. If not, you can get by usually by the back of your camera. Just be consistent in using the meter. We talked about high-speed sync. That doesn't apply for here. The exposure triangle everyone talks about, to me, really has 4 legs: aperture, shutter speed, sensitivity, and the amount of light, especially when working with strobes, because you can control the amount of light. And I'm going to skip over. This is connections. Just have fun with your subjects. Make them forget that the camera's there. Post-processing, I do as little as possible. I gave a similar lecture to this Tuesday night to the Photoshop user group. I was like, why you have me here? I don't use Photoshop. If I can't finish my photo off in Lightroom, I failed as a photographer. I mean, I go into Photoshop if I need to do a lot of blemish control, or if I'm going to add a different background or some textures. And then sometimes for beauty stuff, I may use portraiture as my choice, but not often. Just some examples of different adding textures to photos that I do in Photoshop. My equipment list. And I can make most of this available, and it's going to be on the video that we're recording here. Thank you. So I am one of the creative pros for Interfit. You can find their products at interfitphotographic.com. And they do offer a 10% discount if you buy direct from them. However, Glazer sells Interfit equipment. I'd rather you buy from a local dealer and support them. But if you do have to order mail order, Cornicello 10, all caps, is a 10% discount if you purchase directly from Interfit. So thank you all for coming out, and thank you all.